And welcome all. So here's what we're doing. Good morning. And we're launching into our last day of this 48 hours. And as Rabbi Dixon said, so we have of the 48 hours, we've got 15 of them to go. 15 of them to go. It ends tonight with Rabbi News class, which ends at 9 p.m. this evening. And got a great lineup today, Yemir Hashem. But right now, we're going to pick up with where we left off yesterday at this hour. This is the Learning Chumash, actually erroneously listed as Shemos chapter 20, when it's really Shemos chapter 19. I hope people will forgive that bait and switch. So if you thought you were going to get the 10 Commandments, you're actually getting the run-up to the 10 Commandments. And okay. Okay. So here we are in chapter 19. And so what we did yesterday was the arrival at Mount Sinai. And we went through a number of points when we arrive at Mount Sinai. The number one, in arriving at Mount Sinai is really, for us, the way I'm treating it as metaphorically, how a person approaches receiving the Torah. For them, they physically and literally approach Mount Sinai to receive the Torah. So we ourselves would have to go through the same steps if we wanted to approach our personal Mount Sinai and receive the Torah. So the points were that number one, they have to be fresh in your eyes every day. It's a new start every day when you open up the Torah. It's not the same old, same old. It's not that I have learned this before, but it's got to be fresh in your eyes. During these past number of weeks that I've been home on Shabbos, so every Shabbos I've been getting up and I daven, and I try to daven early, and then I sit down for some hours and study the weekly parsha. And I'm reading things and looking into things, and it's been absolutely amazing because it's been new, just so new. It's just absolutely phenomenal. I'm doing things that I've done before, reading the parsha, just read the parsha with Rashi's commentary. It's just amazing. So many new things and so many things I see in Rashi that I've never seen before. So it should always be new. The next is that they travel away from Refidim. Refidim, and as a matter of fact, the famous Medrash says, Refidim was a place, Sharafu Yidam min HaTorah, where they became weak from the Torah. So they travel from Refidim. You have to travel away from there. In essence, you have to do Teshuvah. When you go to learn Torah, you're saying, I'm doing Teshuvah. I'm leaving behind that world. And Vayavomi Bar Sinai. You have to come to, as an act of learning Torah, you come to it as an act of Teshuvah. Then they camped in the Midbar. They camped Vayichan Sham Yisrael. So when people have that attitude that they're approaching the Torah and the Torah is new and they're doing Teshuvah and they want to now approach the Torah and see what it has to say, as opposed to all the mistakes I have in my life, I want to see what the Torah can say to me and do for me. So then they do tshuva. That's why Vayichan Sham Yisrael, and that brings everyone to a state of unity, because everyone is united together in their teshuva approach. And lastly, then Neged Ahar, they are facing the mountain. They're facing east. We're looking for enlightenment. It's not just a class, not just something to do, something we want to learn something, or something that we have to do. We're actually looking for enlightenment. Okay, so now we're going to pick up. Moshe went up to the mountain. Moshe Allah Elohim. So we are in chapter 19. We are in the Shmos, Exodus chapter 19. We are starting with Pasuk 3. Moshe Allah El Elokim. Moshe went up to God. And Hashem called out to him from the mountain. So here, that without the call, without getting the call, that means we have to understand that when we approach the Torah, we are always looking for Hashem to grant us and share with us his enlightenment. If he does not do that, then we're not going to get it. It's not something that's there for my taking as I want, as much as I want, when I want, where I want. No, it's something that we approach and we ask Hashem, will you please open my eyes and let me see something from your Torah? As a matter of fact, I'm going to read you a prayer that we're supposed to say every morning. Just 1 second. So there is the Gemara. There is the Taz writes that we should say the following prayer before we learn Torah. Every morning or every day, whenever you sit down to learn Torah, before learning Torah, we're supposed to say the following prayer. There's actually other paragraphs to it and verses that we say, but I'm going to quote you one particular paragraph. This is the Taz in the Shulchan Aruch. He says as follows: May be your will, Hashem, our God, my God, and the God of my fathers, that you should enlighten my eyes with the light of your Torah. Save me from any mistakes or stumbling, whether it be with things that are permitted or prohibited, whether it be monetary matters, whether it be in the way I teach, or whether it would be in the way I learn. Uncover my eyes so that I can see wonders from your Torah. And any mistakes that I've already made, bring me back to the truth. And don't prevent things of a word of truth from coming to me, because God gives wisdom from his mouth, das usuna, knowledge and understanding. You see very clearly that verse that was quoted, Gal einai, uncover my eyes, and I'll look at wonders from your Torah. The Torah is not something that I can just go, it's not there for the taking. It perhaps, astrophysics is there for the taking. If you have enough brains or you're taught properly, you can figure it out. But Torah, you can't figure it out unless God allows you to figure it out. And therefore, God calls out to Moshe from the mountain and he says, okay, so Hashem gives him the green light and he says, he calls him onto the mountain. And then he says to him, so shall you say to the Beis Yaakov, and so shall you relate to the children of Israel. Then he's saying that there are two different voices that the Torah is taught in, and those voices are a softer voice and a harsher voice. And the softer voice relates to, is identified with the Beis Yaakov, with the house of Yaakov, which Rashi quotes the Medrash, identifies that with the women of Israel. And the harsher voice is the Bnei Yisrael, the men of Israel, that the men are spoken to in one voice and the women are spoken to in another voice. And this tells us that when we study the Torah, or when the Torah is related, it's related in different ways at different times, at different places, to different people. So there's one approach for one group of people and a different approach for a different group of people. Now, all those are how we come to the Torah, but what about the message of the Torah? What is the central understanding, the basic understanding of why we come to the Torah. So that we pick up with Pasuk 4. He says to Moshe to tell the people as follows. Atem re'isem, you have seen Asher asisi l'Mitzrayim, what I did for Egypt. V'asoeschem al kanfei nesharim, I bore you on the wings of eagles. V'aviaschem elai, and I brought you to me. So, first of all, he says that we have to understand a basic understanding of the Torah presupposes the awareness of certain realities. One reality is that you've seen what happened to the Egyptians. You had that experience already. You know what happened to them. So you know what God can do. You know what his abilities are, and you know that he is involved, personally involved. He's not a remote God. If he was a remote God, he wouldn't really care too much what goes on in Egypt. It wouldn't matter to him if the Egyptians are the good guys or the bad guys, because he would be busy doing his own stuff. He doesn't care what's going on down here in this world. But we see no, just the opposite. He is very intimately involved with what's happening in this world, and he's willing to do something about it. We saw that in Egypt. He came in, he got involved, he took up arms on behalf of one particular group of people as opposed to another group of people. So he took care of the Jewish people and he punished the Egyptians. He has the ability and he has the will to do that. Then, he bore Israel on the wings of eagles out of Egypt, and I brought you to me. So I have shown that I have interest in creating a relationship with you. If I took you out from there and I brought you to here, that means I care about you. I want you to be here. And here means here with me. So I took you out. This is like, they called it, one they called Operation Magic Carpet, and another one's called On the Wings of Eagles. But these ideas were when they got the Jews, when they took them out around the time of the founding of the state of Israel, when they took the Jews first out of Iraq, and then they took them out of Yemen. They brought them out of these countries and brought them to Israel. Now, of course, if you speak to any of them, they would tell you that their arrival in Israel was not all that pleasant. They thought that they thought that Mashiach came and took them and flew them to Israel. And when they got to Israel, they found a harsh reality that was shocking to them, but that's a whole different story. But anyway, the idea of Wings of Eagles is I brought you to me so that you could be with me. Now, Viata, here's the deal. I'm going to offer you the following deal. Viata, and now. Im shema tishmu b'koli. If you listen to my voice, ushmartem es brisi, and you will guard my covenant, v'yisam li segula mikol ha'amim, you will be the treasured nation of all the nations in the world. Kili kol haaretz, for unto me is the whole world. So I can choose who I want to be my treasured nation and who I don't want to be my treasured nation. So if I pick one group of people to be the treasured nation, I have the right to do that. Now, this is predicated on the fact that you, from your side of the coin, are going to listen to me and guard my covenant. If you do, you will be a treasured nation. I'm going to pick you out and give you most favored nation status. Now, we don't know what most favored nation status entails. So what do you get for being most favored nation status? It does seem to imply, though, that it's a two-way deal. In return for our guarding of the covenant and listening to God's voice, we become most favored nations. Now, I'm not going to dwell on this too much, but this is a huge topic that brings about the tension between Christianity and Judaism that is extended for nearly 2 millennium. Okay, and that is that at a certain point, and I'm not as familiar with Christian doctrine, but I do know that at least by the Middle Ages, if not much earlier, perhaps this is much earlier, the Christian doctrine was that the Jewish people had been chosen, but they didn't live up to the covenant. That it says here in the Torah that if you're chosen, you have to do your side, and in return, God will make you most favored nation. But since they didn't live up to their covenant, they lost their most favored nation status. And instead, God switched to another situation or another mode of conduct, whereby anyone who wanted to believe in Yashka, well, first of all, the fact that, let's just say, the fact that the Jews didn't live up to their covenant proves that it's not doable. It's impossible. And therefore, the first thing he did was he rejected the Jews because he gave them that offer and they didn't live up to it. Then the next thing he did was he created Yashka because he realized that it's an impossible situation and everyone's just going to believe in Yashka and he'll die for your sins and everything's going to be okay and so on and so forth. But their hatred of the Jews and rejection of the Jews, they believe, is a holy duty because the Jewish people didn't live up to their side of the bargain. And because they didn't live up to their side of the bargain, they're rejected. And that's why they're supposed to be punished for failing, for their failure to live up to their part of the bargain. So that's the deal with that. Now, there is a tremendous refutation. There's actually numerous refutations of that in the Torah, because when we get later on to the end of the Torah, we get into Parshas Nitzavim and Vayelech, it's crystal clear that Hashem says, or even at the end of Parshas Kisavo, where Hashem says, even with all of this, even if you're in the lands that I dispersed you to, I haven't forgotten you and I'm going to bring you back. So it becomes crystal clear that it's erroneous. But based on this pasuk here, one might say that we would be rejected or we would lose our most favored nation status if we don't live up to our side of the covenant. And that would seem to make sense, except that the Torah says it's not true. But otherwise it would make sense. But now, let's look at the next pasuk, because he's going to describe what does that mean to be of most favored nation status. So it says, pasuk 6, chapter 19, Exodus 19:6, V'atem tihiyu li mamleches kohanim v'goy kadosh. You will be a kingdom of kohanim and a holy nation. That is the message that you should bring to the Bnei Israel. That you will be, if you become a segula, a treasured nation from all of the other nations, then you're going to be, that was pasuk 5, then you will be a kingdom of Kohanim and a holy nation. Kingdom of Kohanim and a holy nation. What does that mean, to be a kingdom of Kohanim and a holy nation? So we have to ask ourselves, what is the function of Kohanim. How do Kohanim function? What do we do with them? What do we have them for? Okay, I'm going to ask you to hold on just a second. I'm going to give myself a drink. Be right back. Okay, thanks for waiting. Mamlechas Kohanim v'goy kadosh, kingdom of Kohanim, holy nation. Kingdom Kohanim. What is the function of a Kohen? So, Kohen is a priest. What's the function of a priest? We all know the world has priests. You know, every idolatry has priests. Christianity has priests. Every religion has priests. We got priests. Priests. What is the function of a priest? What is the function of a Kohen? So, for us, you look in the Torah, and if we were going to say, if I look at all the different things that a Kohen does, so some people might be immediately attracted to the portions that the Kohen receives. You know, the Kohen receives truma from the crops. The Kohen receives a part of all your portion of every offering that you bring, challah, things like that. Well, that's not their function. That's just their take. Okay? And also, we see Kohanim have lots of special rules. They can't marry, they're not allowed to marry a woman that was married to a non-Jew. They're not allowed to marry a divorcee. They're not allowed to become Tomei and all that. That's also not their function. Those are rules that govern the Kohanim. But what actually is their function? What do they do? So primarily, when you look at the Torah, you'll see pretty quickly that what they do is they work in the Beis HaMikdash, and they primarily administer the korbanos. Okay, so the function of the Kohen is to work in the Beis HaMikdash and to bring the offerings. Now, for that, we have to take it just a step further. They bring the korbanos. Well, korban is an important concept. In English, it is primarily translated as sacrifices. They bring the sacrifices. And that, therein lies a fundamental disconnect between the attitude of the Torah and the attitude of the non-Jews who translate the Torah. And truthfully, we also have the same gap, because we come at the Torah through Goyish eyes. We actually even come at the Torah through a Goyish language. So, you know, we read the Torah, and then we look in our art scroll, and we see what does it mean in English. So English is not the language of the Torah. The language of God is Lashon HaKodesh, the holy language. So if we're coming at the Torah or to the Torah through the English language, we're already at a disadvantage. In English, they primarily refer to korbanos as sacrifices. That is indicative of the non-Jewish approach to offerings in the Beis HaMikdash. When one offers something to God, you're sacrificing, you're giving up something, and you're giving it to someone else. You're giving up something that really belongs to you, and you're letting it go to someone else. And the point is, the reason why it's a desired act, because it shows that I'm willing to do something for you. Okay? So if you stop and think about it, it's erroneous from the start. Let's just imagine I buy my wife a beautiful gift for her birthday. So I buy her this beautiful birthday gift. And I come to her and I say, look at what I have sacrificed to purchase this gift for you. Well, it's all wrong. She's not going to like that. She will not like that at all. I could have had my new set of golf clubs. I could have had a vacation. I could have bought the power tools I've been looking for. But instead, I sacrificed to get this for you. And that's why you should be appreciative that I gave up something for you. Now, of course, it's always is implied. If I buy something, it is implied that I gave up something for you. But that doesn't go over so well. You don't like that attitude. I gave up something for you, because that's really making it all about you. Instead, we would like something to be a korban. Korban is from the word karov, which means close. And ban, karov, when you put a nun at the end of it, it's something that makes whatever the root of that word was. So, like a seder means to be in order, everything to be in order. A sadran is someone that organizes things and puts things in order. Okay, so therefore, karov in Hebrew means close. Korban is something that makes close, that makes things close. When I bring my sheep or goat or cow to the temple and I offer it to be slaughtered and put on the altar, I intend that to be a korban. The reason I want to bring that is because I want it to bring me close to that he which dwells in that place. Basically, I want to come close to God. And the way I come close to God is by giving something of me to him. And when he takes something of me to him, then that brings us close. And this is always true. I think, at least I don't know, in my personal experience of giving gifts to my wife on birthdays and things like that, that she always appreciates the card and the personal message that comes in the card more than she appreciates the particular gift, at least at the time. Maybe as time goes on and the card goes into a drawer somewhere, and the gift is still used, or if it's jewelry, maybe she's wearing it or whatever, maybe it changes over time. But it is the bonding of the two. That's what korban means. That's what karov means. Karov means to come close, and that bonding is what it's all about. So let's go back a step. What is the primary function of a Kohen, at least according to the Torah in Judaism? The function of the Kohen, who acts as the priest, the function of the Kohen is to bring close the Bnei Yisrael. It's to administer the korban. That means to administer or to oversee the process whereby the Jew becomes close to God. That is the function of the Kohen, the function of the priest. When we come to the Beis Hamikdash, we need a Kohen there that will help us become close to God. Now, you could say, why do we need a Kohen there? Why can't I come into the Beis Hamikdash and offer my offering and become close to God? I understand perhaps why we need a Beis Hamikdash. Maybe, maybe not. Why can't I go out in the backyard and build my altar, hopefully with an attachment to a gas tank, or maybe even built-in gas line? Should be really cool. That way I don't have to spend any time getting those coals to light up. So I'll have my little bumma, I'll have my little altar in the backyard. And when I want to become close to God, I'll take my sheep out there in the backyard and I will slaughter the sheep and I will put some of the meat on there, some of the fats, let's say, on this altar and have it be burnt up to God. And I will eat the rest of the lamb chops and I will therefore be close to God. Why do we need the Kohen? Why do we need the Beis Hamikdash? Why does the Kohen have to administer the korban? Why can't I administer the korban? Okay, well, let's stop and ask ourselves another question. If the word is korban and the intention is to bring us close, that must mean that we are at a distance, that there is a distance that exists between us. And perhaps, maybe the mashal doesn't work when it's husband and wife, although it works quite often, that sometimes you can have husband and wife, and there is a distance between the two of you. There might be a distance between husband and wife. And sometimes they need a korban to bring them closer together. So sometimes when the husband wants to get out of the doghouse, he needs to do something or give something to his wife that says, I would like to bring our relationship back closer together. Sometimes, however, things have really gotten out of hand and they really are at odds, this couple. And sometimes they actually need an intermediary, someone else. They need to go for marriage counselor or some type of guidance, someone that will help out, someone that will bring them closer together, because it's really gotten out of hand. So when it gets out of hand, then you need someone, a Kohen. So you turn to the marriage counselor, you call him up, the marriage counselor sits with you, talks, goes through the problems, goes through the issues, perhaps makes some advice, perhaps tells you this is what you need to do, this is how you need to do it. Maybe sits down and says, stop doing it like this and instead do it like that. Turn loose of this, instead do that. So too, God is a great and awesome existence. And we are very small and very narrow focused, very myopic. And we only see ourselves in our world and our needs. And it could very well be possible that although I might want to get close to God, I really just don't know how to do it. I don't know where to turn. I don't know how to get there. So I know that I want to bring something and offer it to God, but I'm just not sure how to go about this. You know, when my son, who's engaged now, so when right after he got engaged, he was going to give her a gift. So I had to coach him up a little bit about the gift. And I said, I had to coach him up, like how to make it a little personal and to get the flowers that go along with it. And I said, write her a card and do it like this and don't do it like that. And, make sure when you give it, you want to come in like this, the place, the time. So, we went through all that, a little bit of coaching. I'm sure by now he's on his own and he probably should be, because, if he's looking for any expertise in how to make things really personalized and all that, he could probably find other people that will give him better advice than me. But anyway, you have to coach him up a little bit. That's where the Kohen comes in. So the Kohen's job is to bring the person close to Hashem. Okay. So let's see all the steps that we have. So we have the person that wants to come karov, not make a sacrifice, but he wants to come karov, he wants to come close. He might be at a great distance from that he wants to come close to, and therefore he might need some assistance, some counseling. So he turns to the counselor. We'll call that the Kohen. And the counselor will help him come close to that which he wants to come close to. In this case, it's God. Well, if the counselor wants to help him come close to God, then the counselor must, by definition, understand God, understand that which they're counseling. You go to a marriage counselor who understands what marriage is all about. Hopefully some marriage counselor has a happy marriage. Although I am familiar with a certain popular marriage counselor here in town who's divorced. And I guess what he's saying is, I've learned from my mistakes. I don't know. But supposedly, the one who's counseling has a relationship. Sometimes you go to a certain person and you go to the counselor will build a rapport between both husband and wife, and the counselor will therefore be able to help each come closer to the other because they have a rapport. And they can speak one to the other. Okay, I hear what you're saying. I hear your issue. Let me talk to your spouse, see what they have to say. Okay, I hear your issue, I hear you. Now back to the first one, back and forth. That might be a certain type of mediation. Or actually, now that I understand what's going on, because I have a clearer picture from one side, I will be able to give better instruction to the other side. That's very common. So that means that the Kohen, in our case, needs to be connected to God, while at the same time connected to the people. It's as though the Kohen puts out his two hands, and with one hand he says, I hold on to you, and the other hand he holds on to God, and he will be the connection point between the two. You bring me your korban, I pass it on to God. How can I pass it on to God? Because I'm closer to God. How is the Kohen closer to God than anyone else? Well, that is also in our pasuk. Because we are going to be a kingdom of Kohanim, v'goy kadosh, and a holy nation. That is the connection point to God, the holy nation part. Now, holy, kadosh. Let's talk about kadosh for a little bit, and then we'll bring all this together. So what does kadosh mean? Kadosh means holy. What does holy mean? Kadosh. I always ask people this question. What does kadosh mean? Means to be holy. Oh, what does holy mean? To be kadosh. Right? It's a very difficult word to translate. We all seem to have a feel for it, this word kadosh, holy, but it's very difficult to translate, particularly not in one word. Usually it takes a big long sentence. But I will translate kadosh in one word. Kadosh in a word means separate. Separate. Not some description of, well, you're like thinking about God all the time and clean and pure and all. It really means separate. Plain and simple, it means separate. Now, the idea of being separate means that in order to be holy, we have to separate ourselves from a bunch of things. So, for example, in order for me to keep my suit clean, I might have to take it off before I mow the lawn, or take it off before I take out the garbage, or put on an apron before I do work in the kitchen, or overalls before I go out and do some other type of dirty work or whatever it is. So if I want to stay clean, I have to separate myself. I might have to put a covering or a distance between my suit and dirty things. But you can't just engage in dirty things and expect to remain kadosh. Kadosh means you have to separate yourself. And we, the Kohen particularly, is separate. The Kohen particularly has to separate himself from tameh things, things that are impure. If he separates himself from tameh, then he becomes separate from the dirty, lower, base elements of the world and becomes, therefore, more able, there's more room within him to have a connection to the more godly, separate things. Because God is not just Kadosh, but he is Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. God is separate, 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 very, very separate. God is not part of any of this stuff. God is separate. And in order to be kadosh and attached to him, anyone that wants to try to be attached to him also has to separate himself. So the person who separates himself now has an ability to be kadosh, and therefore will have an ability to connect to God. So the Kohen can act as the connector to God, as the marriage counselor. He can bring about the korban, because the Kohen lives under a separate set of restrictions that make him more separate than anyone else, and therefore closer to God. Now, on the other hand, though, the Kohen can't get too kadosh, because if he's too kadosh, then he'll be too separate from the people. So there has to be this balance. So on the one hand, the Kohen, so therefore God needs a person, someone, a priest, who functions in his temple that will be the priest, the Kohen, to serve there and bring about the korban, do the korban. So that priest has to be a human being of the people, someone of the people, but not someone that's too far removed from the people that he can't receive a korban from them. On the other hand, although he is from the people, he has to be separated from the people so that he is kadosh enough to become part of the people, to become close to God. So he has to be kadosh enough to become close to God. Welcome, Elliot. Happy to have you on. Elliot's connecting. Okay. Very good. So just said Elliot connected. He just made himself a korban. That's what we've been talking about. So now we've been talking about the fact that a Kohen, that the function of a Kohen, a priest, is to bring the korban. The korban, the offering, is really, in Hebrew, is the vehicle that brings people close to God. The Kohen is needed because the people, being far from God, it's very difficult for them to just get close to God. People living their own small little existence every day, and God is very, very great and very, very removed in a certain way. So therefore, we need an intermediary. The intermediary is the Kohen. The Kohen is a person who can relate to the other people, knows who they are and what they are, and at the same time, the Kohen is also separate from all the other people because of the particular restrictions and the lifestyle that he leads, and therefore also has a certain attachment to God that is different than that of all other people. And therefore the Kohen is the perfect a personality to function to connect the people to God. So the people will bring their korban to the Kohen, their offering to the Kohen. Let's say it's the first fruits. Mr. Farmer has harvested his crop and he takes his first fruits to the temple. In the Beis Hamikdash, he'll bring it to the Kohen that will be there at that time. The Kohen, fascinatingly, will take the basket of fruit. He will stand behind the person who's bringing the offering. He will put his hands, the person's holding the basket, and he'll put his hands underneath the hands of the person who's holding the basket. And together they will wave the basket back and forth, up and down. So the Kohen with the person, by doing this, the Kohen is connecting, making the person korov, close to God. Then they will put down the basket of fruit there in the temple. The Kohen helps the person come close to God because the person, this guy's a farmer. He has a farm up in Emek Yisrael, in the Jezreel Valley up north. What does he know about God? He knows about farming. He lives in his farm community and he has Mrs. Farmer as a wife and all his farmer buddies who are, they'll do all their farming stuff. He knows tractors. He doesn't know Beis Hamikdash. So he comes to the Kohen and the Kohen helps him connect. The Kohen, for his part, spends a lot of time being separate from tractors and things like that so that he can be associated with God. That describes the function of the Kohen. Now, let's take ourselves back out, away from that, and get back to the pasuk that we were reading. Pasuk, we're in Exodus chapter 19, pasuk 6, wherein it says, V'atem, and you, tihiu li, will be for me, Mamleches Kohanim v'goy kadosh, a kingdom of Kohanim. So now we are supposed to be a kingdom of Kohanim, a whole entire kingdom of Kohanim. Well, we now know what Kohanim do. Kohanim are the priests, and we know the function of the priest. So if we are a kingdom of Kohanim, so you have every congregation has its priest. So you come to the shul, and you got your Kohanim there. And the Kohanim will get up and they will bless the people. Okay, they'll do their Kohen thing. The rabbi is sort of like the Kohen of the shul. And the rabbi will help the shul and the congregation get closer to God, perhaps through his inspiring words or through his prayers or whatever it is. Fine. Now, what if the entire kingdom is Kohanim? So we have a whole kingdom of Kohanim. Who's the congregation? If you're going to be a kingdom of Kohanim, who is the congregation? And the answer to that question will have to be that the congregation is the rest of the world. It's all the other people, all the nations of the world. We will be a kingdom of Kohanim for the entire world. And if the entire world, says God, every single person that's walking on the face of the earth, the Swede and the Pole and the Ethiopian, the American, the Chinese, every one of those people on the planet, they are the congregation, and the congregation is brought to God by the Kohen. Okay, we have to interrupt this for a late breaking message. My granddaughter in Eretz Yisrael has just become a sponsor of this talk. That's great. I wonder how much they sponsored it for. Now I'll know how much more money I have to send them. Okay. So the people of the world need to get close to God. The people of the world are very far away from God. The people of the world need, all the nations of the world need one nation to step up and be the Kohen to all the nations of the world, to connect them to God. And here we pull into our last step of this process. If we're going to be a nation of Kohanim, to connect the world to God, then we have to be a Goy Kadosh. We have to be a Kadosh nation, a nationality that is itself Kadosh. And we've already said, what does the word Kadosh mean? Kadosh means separate. So we have to be Kadosh ourselves, which means that we have to separate ourselves from many of the things that the other nations of the world are doing and bring them closer to and be closer to Hashem. The only way we can be closer to God is by separating. So therefore, we have a number of restrictions that other nations do not have. Just like the Kohen has a number of restrictions that the rest of Israel doesn't have, we, Klal Yisrael, has a number of restrictions that the nations of the world don't have. So when the nations of the world don't have those restrictions, then they're more involved in the world. They're not very separate from the world. We are more separate from the world because we have more restrictions. On the other hand, we are people. We are, and we can be God's agents in this world because we also understand what it is to eat and to drink and to get married and to be sick and to be healthy and all the things that the rest of the world understands. We understand that also. We understand all of those things, so we can relate to them. On the other hand, due to our extra restrictions, by not eating the pig and by observing the holidays and by not wearing shatnez and by putting a mezuzah on our door and on and on and on, all of those things make us kadosh, separate from the rest of the world. And we therefore can have a relationship, a closer relationship to God, and act therefore as the mamlechas kohanim, the kingdom of priests to the rest of the world. So this then is the deal that God offered to the Bnei Yisrael. So he said, if you take on that role and you guard my covenant, you listen to my voice and you guard my covenant, which means I'm going to give you instructions. I'm going to tell you how to function. You need to follow my rules, and you need to guard my covenant. You need to guard this, understand who you are, what's your role at all times. And if you do that, then you will be able to function as a kingdom of priests. Now, one other thing. So we will ask ourselves now, how today in secular year 2020, in May, I believe it's 27th today. So May 27th, 2020, how is it that I function as a mamlechas kohanim and a goy kadosh? Is it possible? Or perhaps we're just waiting till Mashiach comes and we all get born back to Israel on the wings of eagles, and we will then be the nation of Israel in Israel, and we'll be able to function as that light unto the nations, meaning we're going to shine the light of God onto the nations. We will be the korban or the kohen It helps connect the two ends, takes the two diverse ends, grabs on a hold to the nation on one side and to God on the other side, and connects the two of them. So can it be done today? So I believe that it can be done today. And even though I'm not a person that has too much interaction with non-Jews, many of you might go out in any given day and you have people that you work with and you interact with, clients, customers, bosses, fellow employees, neighbors. So, I live on a street where I've got some Jews on the street, non-Jews. I mostly relate to the Jews on the street. Not really too friendly with any of the non-Jews on the street. I work in a Jewish environment. The people I come in contact with every day are Jewish. So my interactions with non-Jews limited. Now that we're in COVID, we're in a COVID world even more so. I don't even go to stores anymore. And so I don't even interact with a non-Jewish cashier. It's very, very rare. And yet, I believe that I can still be a Mamlechas Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh. And how is that? So the way that would work is as follows. Welcoming Kevin. Good morning. And Kevin's pulling in for the 7 o'clock hour. And he gets a chance to hear the wrap up to the 6 o'clock hour. And that is that the existence of the Jewish people tells the world that there is God. Everybody in the world knows. Everybody in the world knows that if there are Jews, there is a God. The Christians know it. The Muslims know it. I would contend even the Chinese know it. But certainly the Christians and the Muslims know it. But anyone that knows of the existence of the Jews would have to ask themselves, who the heck are these people? What are they all about? The Koreans know about the Jews. They're all studying Talmud in Korea. I don't know, they all are, but the country is certainly aware of them. The Chinese are doing a lot of business with Israel. Matter of fact, this is a potential flashpoint because as the United States proceeds to go to war with the Chinese, and this trade war is certainly a war, and certainly we are at war with the Chinese right now, which would only make sense because the Chinese are gobbling up the world. And if the United States doesn't want to get gobbled up by the Chinese, it has to go to war. That's the only way you do it. So, when the bumper sticker says war is not the answer, it's really not true. War is the only answer. So we're at war with the Chinese right now. So Israel is in a pickle. This is an old Israel problem that Israel has been suffering going all the way back to the days of the first Commonwealth in Israel. And that is, you have opposing powers in the world, and Israel would like nothing more than to be neutral and to be able to make money off of both sides. But some of those powers are not going to, understandably, not going to allow them that luxury. So the Chinese, of course, would like Israel to join in on their side. And the United States says, hey, guys, Uncle Sam has been here for you. You got to throw in your hat with Uncle Sam. So anyway, that's going to be an issue. But everybody realizes that the Jews are different, that the Jews should not exist. By rights, we shouldn't be around. Everyone understands that. Why are we around? It could only be because of God. You people are different. You people are strange. You're God's people. God got to be looking out for the Jewish people. Otherwise, we couldn't still be here. How would we have survived all of the things that have come upon us? And it's not just Jews that understand that. The Goyim also understand that. The Goyim understand the Jews are different. The Jews are just They come from somewhere else. Throughout the Middle Ages, and all these rules that govern all these different peoples. And then there were the Jews. Jews are different. Jews like aliens, perpetual aliens. So we know who they are, we've identified them, but we can't figure them out because they seem to have some superpowers. They seem to be coming from somewhere else. Because why haven't they disappeared? Why aren't they gone? Why is it after all the persecutions, they're still around? How could that be? Everybody knows there is something weird about the Jews. And most of the people who are in the know that that's something weird is that God is looking out for the Jews. So when the Goy, the nation of the world, sees the Jew, he is immediately reminded of God. The Jew is a perpetual reminder to the rest of the world of God, God's people. Therefore, what do we have to do? We simply have to be a Jew in the eyes of the world. That's all. So when a Jew is walking down the street, walking up or down Tilly Mill Road, I'm not sure which way is down and which way is up Tilly Mill Road, but probably since Mount Vernon is a ridge, and it's all downhill from Tilly Mill Road all the way down to Kevin's house. So if you're walking, that's probably down Tilly Mill Road. And when you're walking to Shul, it's up Tilly Mill Road, at least if you're coming from Kevin's house. Now that's pretty cool because you get you get extra reward for walking uphill to get to Shul. It's a beautiful thing. So anyway, when you're walking down the street and it's Shabbos and the non-Jews are driving by and they see you walking to Shul, they are reminded there is a Jew. They are therefore brought into reality with God. They are reminded that there is a God in the world, and that is the function of a Jew. Now, all of that presupposes that said Jew is walking on the street on the way to Shul on Shabbos. If said Jew is found in the mall on Shabbos, then he's not really doing anything for anyone. If said Jew is found, at the sporting event or whatever, he's not telling anyone about God. If said Jew is walking in the street without a yarmulke, he's not telling anyone about God. If said Jew is wearing his shorts and a t-shirt on Shabbos, he's not telling anyone about God. But if he's wearing all of his Jewish regalia, he's wearing nice clothing on Shabbos and a yarmulke on Shabbos, or even on a weekday, then he's telling the world about God. And anywhere that Jew goes, and he's wearing his yarmulke, or he's wearing his tzitzis, he is advertising to the world that there is a God. That's what he is telling everyone. And therefore, he's doing his function. A Jew who is acting and conducting himself visibly as a Jew is now being a mamleches kohanim and goy kadosh and fulfilling their mission in the world. And that is exactly what Hashem said. If you guard my covenant, you will be a treasured nation from all the nations, because I own the whole world. And you will be, for me, mamleches kohanim, a kingdom of priests, v'goy kadosh, and a holy nation. These are the words that I want you to share with the Bnei Yisrael. So that is the function of the Kohen. That's what a Kohen is supposed to do. We as a nation function as the Kohanim. And when we're doing our job, then we are a treasured nation. Treasured nation receives most special nation status. So what happened? To take it one step further, that was the message that Hashem gave to the Bnei Israel. So Pasuk 7 says, Vayavo Moshe. Moshe went, Vayikra l'ziknei ha'am, and he called to the elders of the nation. Vayosem lifneihem, he placed before them, is kol hadvarim ha'ela, all of these things, asher tzivo Hashem. He came, all these things, meaning he explained to them the whole deal. What does it mean to be a Goy Kadosh in a Mamlechas Kohanim, a kingdom of Kohanim, and a Goy Kadosh? This is the role that God is looking for Israel to serve. And he explained it to the men the way the men need to understand it, and the way the women need to understand it. All these are references to the earlier psukim. He spoke softly to the women, harshly to the men, so on and so forth. And he said to them, here's the deal. Are you in? Here's your deal. Are you in? And the people said, Pasuk 8, Vayanu kolam yachtov vayomru. And the people answered together in unison, in a unified voice, and they said, Kol asher diber Hashem na'aseh. Whatever God said, we will do. Vayoshev Moshe divrei ha'am el Hashem. And Moshe took back the words of the nation to Hashem. So the next day, Moshe got up early and he went back up to heaven, and he, excuse me, where are we? Okay, the birds are chirping. Moshe went back up to God and he took back the message. The people are in. Whatever God said, we will do. Now, this is not the same as Naaseh v'nishma, which we'll get to a little bit later, but they said, yes, we'll take the deal. We're going to be in the deal. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to pause for a moment. We'll stop here with our learning of Chumash, and we're going to switch over to our Mishnayos. But before I do that, I'm going to switch myself over to Talis and Tefillin mode. So I'm going to go get dressed, and I'll be back in a moment with my Mishnah, and we'll learn some Mishnayos.